After 2 long years of waiting, From is finally back. This season, the residents are about to uncover deeper truths. But at the same time, they're also going to face things far more bizarre and terrifying than anything before. Not long ago, Sheriff Boyd managed to kill one of the creatures. Everyone believed it was the greatest victory they had ever achieved. But as it turns out, that moment wasn't hope. It was just the beginning of a new wave of despair. At the end of last season, Boyd rushed headfirst into the underground tunnel, desperate for answers. What he found there was something truly horrifying. The creature he had personally killed had somehow been reborn inside Fatima's womb. Forget Boyd's reaction for a second. Fatima herself is already on the brink of collapse. After carrying the pregnancy for 10 months, she can no longer hold herself together. That strange woman in a kimono forcibly delivers the baby and then disappears straight into the tunnel. Fatima once naively believed that the life growing inside her would bring hope to the town. But now, it's clear she was nothing more than a vessel for a monster. Ellis, the sheriff's son, holds Fatima tightly in his arms, trying to comfort her. But no matter what he does, he can't calm the deep, uncontrollable fear shaking her to the core. After watching them leave, Deputy Kenny quickly rushes into the dark, suffocating tunnel. As he searches for Boyd, a massive hand suddenly clamps over his mouth from behind. It's Boyd himself, already on his way out. He signals Kenny to stay silent, but in the very next second, the smiling man appears out of nowhere. The two barely make it out of the underground alive. Still shaken, Kenny voices the question that's been haunting him. Didn't they completely burn that creature to death? So how's it back? Boyd's face is filled with despair, because inside that tunnel, he witnessed something impossible. The smiling man growing from a lump of flesh into a fully formed human being. Meanwhile, another storyline from the end of last season begins to unfold. Julie, who somehow comes from the future, finds her father Jim. In a panic, she warns him to be careful. But before anything can be done, a creature suddenly appears in broad daylight. Smiling calmly, it rips open Jim's throat without hesitation. As Julie screams in despair, the creature speaks in an eerily composed voice. Once a story is written, it cannot be changed no matter where or when you come from. Then it slowly walks over to the dying Jim, almost regretful, saying that he won't be able to witness what comes next. The scene shifts to the road just outside the town. A middle-aged man stands helplessly in front of a fallen tree, blocking his way. It's clear what that means. This nightmare town is about to gain another new arrival. As soon as Sheriff Boyd returns to his office, he immediately pulls out every bullet he has collected so far. Deputy Kenny stands nearby, completely confused. Then Boyd finally speaks, his voice hoarse and heavy. After witnessing a creature being reborn with his own eyes, he has come to a terrifying realization. There is no winning against those monsters. Boyd understands now that the only thing he can do is make sure the townspeople can leave this world without suffering. That's why he needs to gather enough bullets, so that everyone gets one. Hearing this sends a chill straight down Kenny's spine. The man standing in front of him. Can he still be the same sheriff who once led everyone to fight for survival? But after a moment, Kenny hesitates and then quietly accepts the logic. Maybe this really is one of the last options they have left. He slowly sits down and murmurs a number under his breath. Back in last season's events, it was Elgin who fell under the influence of that kimono woman, which led him to lure Fatima into the cellar to give birth. Sarah knows that Elgin has been completely brainwashed, so she resorts to extreme measures to force the truth out of him. Not long after, the town's Dr. Christie arrives at the shared house, carrying her medical kit. Even though Elgin made a terrible mistake, it doesn't mean he deserves to die for it. Still, he has already paid a brutal price. During the interrogation, Sarah gouged out his left eye with her own hands. Christie carefully examines the wound. The eye is beyond saving. The most she can do now is stitch it up and prevent the damage from getting worse. Lying there, Elgin is consumed by regret over his own foolishness. But Christie sees things more clearly. Elgin didn't choose evil. He was simply caught in a trap. He's not the first person to be deceived like this, and he definitely won't be the last. If anyone is making the fastest progress in uncovering the truth, it has to be Tabitha, Jim's wife. Back in the previous season, she and the brilliant but eccentric Jade Herrera finally uncovered a crucial secret. This isn't their first time in this town. Their souls have been trapped in an endless cycle, reliving it over and over again. The truth is even more horrifying. The creatures that wander the town at night were once its residents. People who sacrificed children in exchange for immortality. In their past lives, Tabitha and Jade already discovered this secret. And ever since, they've been searching for a way to free the children's souls from this eternal prison. After returning from the forest, Julie Matthews and Ethan Matthews rush over immediately. They haven't seen their father Jim for an entire day. Tabitha shakes her head in confusion, unaware that Jim may never come back. Just as the three of them are about to head home, the sound of screeching brakes suddenly cuts through the air. A car loses control and crashes straight toward the sheriff's office. With a deafening impact, the vehicle's frame is completely mangled. The driver is slumped over the steering wheel, motionless. In the passenger seat, a young girl is trapped, a shard of broken glass pressed dangerously against her neck. She cries out desperately, begging them to save her father. Everyone rushes forward at once. They carefully pry open the car door, then forcibly break apart the passenger seat before finally pulling the injured girl out. Not long after, Marielle arrives in an ambulance. Fortunately, the girl isn't seriously hurt. Her name is Sophia. She explains that earlier, they encountered a fallen tree on the road. Just as her father was about to drive around it, his body suddenly went into violent convulsions. Moments later, the car lost control and crashed. Standing nearby, Tabitha lets out a quiet sigh. It seems this hopeless prison is about to gain 2 more residents. Beside her, Boyd finds nothing surprising about it. After all, both Elgin and Ethan have experienced sudden seizures before. Things like this are nothing unusual in this cursed town. In the end, with everyone working together, the unconscious driver is rushed to the clinic. Once the crowd disperses, Jade quietly approaches Tabitha. He believes it's time to reveal the truth about their reincarnations, to let everyone know, so they can work together to find a solution. But Tabitha firmly refuses. She can't forget what happened to Sarah, how she was manipulated, how she almost killed her own son. Tabitha fears this could be another trap set by the creatures, meant to throw everyone into suspicion and chaos. For now, she decides to wait until Jim returns and then figure out what to do next. As night begins to fall, Boyd, exhausted after an entire day, heads to the shared house, only to run straight into the newly arrived female officer. It's obvious she hasn't adapted to the town yet, and she clearly has strong opinions about Boyd's way of doing things. But Boyd has no energy to deal with her. He pushes past and walks straight into his daughter-in-law's room, determined to tell everyone what he saw in the tunnel. When Fatima hears that the child she gave birth to has turned into the smiling man, she almost breaks down on the spot. For a moment, she even thinks Boyd must have been mistaken. But Boyd nods firmly because Kenny saw it too. This isn't a hallucination. At that point, Fatima completely loses control. She lashes out at everyone in the room, shouting that she had warned them during her pregnancy, that something was wrong inside her, but not a single person believed her. After that, she runs into the bathroom in tears, trying to wash away the filth and shame with water. Fatima's outburst hits Boyd hard, filling him with a deep sense of failure once again. He turns to Donna and says that the new girl who just arrived will eventually be trapped here like everyone else. Boyd once believed that as long as people fought hard enough, the good would eventually win. But now, he finally understands this place never gave them a way out to begin with. Christy can't stand it anymore. She angrily calls Boyd out, telling him he has no right to give up. As the leader of the town, his despair is more dangerous than the monsters themselves. If even he loses hope, then the rest of the residents will collapse even faster, spiraling into fear and self-destruction. Faced with his son's questioning and his companion's accusations, Boyd finally breaks. He collapses like a child, crying uncontrollably as he leans into his son's arms, pouring out all the pain he's been holding inside. The resurrection of the smiling man has clearly shaken him to his core. Before long, night fully settles in. At the clinic, Sophia finishes praying for her father, then approaches Kenny, asking if she can use a phone to let her mother know she's safe. She even holds on to the hope that once her father wakes up, she can take him to a proper hospital first thing in the morning. Kenny can only respond with helplessness, forced to explain the strange and cruel reality of this town. When Sophia hears that monsters roam outside at night, she actually tries to remove the talisman to test it. Kenny immediately stops her. This isn't something to play with. If that stone comes down, those creatures will break into the clinic without hesitation. Strangely enough, after learning she may never return home, Sophia doesn't seem devastated at all. Instead, she comforts Kenny, even pulling him into a prayer with her. She firmly believes that faith can drive away the deepest fears and bring the soul a kind of eternal peace. Meanwhile, Tabitha is still standing at the front door, her face filled with worry. Her husband Jim still hasn't returned, and the two kids are just as anxious, afraid that something might have happened to him. Forcing herself to stay calm, she reassures Ethan Matthews that his father might just be staying at the shared house or in one of the trailers, and that they'll see him in the morning. The family sits down in the living room to rest for a moment, but suddenly, a sharp metallic clatter echoes from the kitchen. Tabitha immediately thinks Jim has come back, but when she walks over, she sees a metal bowl lying on the floor. And then, something even more unsettling begins to happen. What no one realizes is that all of this fear and despair traces back to an unseen force pulling the strings from the shadows. After confirming that Kenny has fallen asleep, Sophia quietly walks over to her father. She whispers a few words under her breath, and the man lying on the bed slowly opens his eyes. With a faint smile, Sophia begins to speak, thanking him for playing such an important role in this story. What no one could have imagined is this. The old man in yellow who killed Jim earlier quietly removes his coat in an unseen corner. Then his bones begin to twist and contort violently, his body reshaping itself until long hair falls over his shoulders. This creature transforms into Sophia. After that, it disguises itself as a lost traveler and successfully gets into the middle-aged man's car. By staging the crash earlier that day, it manages to enter the nightmare town under the identity of a victim. As for the middle-aged driver, his role in this story is already complete. With a hint of regret, the creature acknowledges that he won't live to see what comes next. With the only witness now dead, the residents, still completely in the dark, are destined to fall even deeper into despair. And that's the end of episode 1 of Asterisk from Season 4. It's still the kind of thriller that's impossible to stop watching. No wonder so many people have been following it for 4 straight years. The only hope now is that this season answers more questions than it raises, instead of dragging things out again and leaving audiences frustrated the whole way through.